Hey, WordPress people. Welcome back to the WPMRR WordPress podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Obi Wan Kenobi.
And you're listening to the WordPress Business Podcast. We've got Obi Wan on the podcast this week. What's going on? Is saving the galaxy this week or what?
Yes. Yeah, man. That's all I do. Help other people save the galaxy ultimately.
There you go. That's I've had people pick Obi Wan before, and a lot of the reply is like, I'm kind of like a background character that like helps other characters to like be their most powerful. So as like an owner of a design agency, I totally get that.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. Is we always talk about being the guide for our customers and helping our customers be the guide for their customers versus trying to be the hero of the story. So instead of being Luke Skywalker, I picked Obi Wan.
There you go. You were the chosen one. I've got the high ground. Yeah. Nice. Okay, we've got Obi Wan on the pod this week, also known as Jay Owen. Jay, why don't you like do a little intro here and tell folks the stuff you do with WordPress?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been building WordPress websites for, I don't know how long, ages. I run this agency for over 20 years, and we've developed hundreds of WordPress websites, which we host, manage, design, develop the whole thing from beginning to end. And, I remember back in the day doing things in plain HTML, and we don't do that anymore. So it's nice to have a platform to use, and WordPress is our platform of choice.
Yeah. Very cool. So one thing I wanted to touch on was you mentioned you build about 50 or so websites a year. Is that like a strategic amount of websites that you're like, maybe we could build like 75, but they wouldn't quite be as good? Like, is 50 kind of a number you were going after, or is that kind of just how it ended up?
Yeah, it's really just how it ended up right now based on our current team size and structure. It's a great number as far as profitability goes. It's a great number as far as producing the right quality. And I think at the end of the day, it's about trying to balance all those elements together, right? Can we provide the right customer service? Do we have the right team? Can we produce the right quality? Can we do it in the right time frame? And so just from our workflow standpoint, it works really well for us to be working on a blueprint, which is basically what we consider to be kind of the front end messaging, website wireframe, all of those details. Then it goes into a website kickoff the next week. Then it goes into actually building it. And then as one website's getting launched, another one's getting kicked off. So it's kind of this pretty steady cadence. It doesn't always work as perfectly as that. I wish that it did, but that's the idea anyway.
Yeah. Very cool. I feel like there are listeners out there who probably we're at the stage we were at some point of our careers where they hear this like 50 number and you're like, it's the great number for profitability. It's great for like customer support. It's just like, we can maximize everything we do with that, like doing around that number of sites. And maybe people starting off are like, okay, like maybe like I need to be doing all this like immediately. I'm sure you had this, you grew into the 50 sites per year model and you had to like, get there, over months, probably years. Like, what was that process like when you like earlier in the agency career, maybe when you weren't doing as many sites and you're still trying to like figure things out?
Oh man, it took me a long time to figure things out. I don't know if I'm slow or what, but I remember. I started really young, so I started building websites when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. Oh, wow. I started the agency that I run today when I was 17, which was almost 21 years ago. And and there were years where I wasn't even sure I'd have enough work to keep myself busy for a week. I remember I was about 22 years old and I'd just gotten married and we wanted to have some kids and the business really was not doing very much at all. Maybe we were doing 25 grand in total revenue. And it was just me. But I was also waiting tables and my wife was waiting tables. And now we do millions of dollars in sales a year now. But back then, I didn't even have enough. I didn't think I could provide for a family. I went to work in the insurance business, kind of put my web agency on the back burner because I didn't think I had what it took, And I came home one day, I knew I'd married the right woman. When I came home, I was upset and I was crying and because I'm a little bit of a crier. And she said, what's wrong? And I'm like, I hate this work. I can do it and I can make a lot of money at it, but I hate it. And she said, so quit and do what you love. And that was the day that I literally, I was 22 years old and I'm 38 now. So that was the day that I said, you know what, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to go as hard as I can and try and find a way to turn this into the thing that provides for our family and creates the future that we want and we dreamed of. And, but I remember telling her back then, like, I just wonder if I'll ever have enough work just to keep myself busy all week. Cause I didn't back then. And now, I mean, we have a full-time in-house team of about 17 people, plus tons of contractors and other services that we use to help support our clients and work. And everybody's got more work than they've got time to do, even in the midst of the current chaos that we're going through globally. Everybody's still crazy busy, which I'm just really, really thankful for. But there certainly were plenty of seasons where 50 websites a year would have been totally insane. I couldn't have done it to begin with, but the idea of just producing that much revenue, and that's only a piece of the business of what we do as well. So it's definitely changed over time.
Yeah, totally, man. I think back to like even like 3 or 4 years ago for me when, because WP Buffs is like coming up on 6 years old, and it's like thinking back to even like earlier days, man, it was so different. And like I'm on your website right now, designextensions.com. You've got this great video on the homepage. You've got like, it is like super tight. Like when you come to the site, you're like, yeah, I want these people to design a website like this. Their design for their own website's killer. Like they got this awesome video. Yeah, I'm going to, do this, this consultation with them. But it wasn't always like that. People will hop on the site and they'll be like, okay, I have to build a site exactly like this. It's like, well, Jay has been doing this for 21 years. He knows a little something about, what works and what converts and, how to put a site together and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And when I feel like most people hear these stories, I love hearing your story of, going through tough times or growing the business as well. A lot of people, they see people with, medium-sized businesses, maybe businesses doing $500,000 a year or millions of dollars a year. And they say like, man, like, how can I do that? And the answer almost everyone I hear give is like, suffer through a few years of like not doing so well and like figure it out along the way. And like one day you'll wake up and just like be there and you'll kind of like question, I don't know how I did this. And maybe I made a few right decisions, but also got lucky here and there. Sounds like your wife, your partner was like a big help in that, which I would have to say the same. I have a very supportive partner. But I would love to hear like any other small pieces of like, I don't know, like small details of like something that happened that kind of helped you to move things forward and get past some of those tough times.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I've learned along the way. And I'll give you two specific ones. The first one's an easy one. It's not really necessarily easy to grow, but it's something that you have to think about. My uncle told me very early on, we were just going project to project. So I'd do a project and I'd make $500. I'd do another project and I'd make $1,500. And I'd do a project and I'd make $5,000. And when you're, 19 or 20 years old, $5,000 is like, holy smoke, this is a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, I have 17 people I have to pay for. It's not a ton of money anymore. But one of the things he said to me at that time was, Jay, you've got to find a way to create recurring revenue. And that has been the godsend of the sustainability of the company from a growth standpoint, because every month you're not starting over. Every year you're not starting over. But I remember, the very first thing I ever sold that was recurring was website hosting. Naturally, if you're selling a website, the next easiest thing is website hosting. Now, if you've done website hosting long enough, there's a lot of pain out there that can be involved with hosting websites. Oh, yeah. But thankfully, the hosts that exist today that are out there are so far superior to what existed back then. It makes it a lot easier, especially on WordPress. But I remember selling a website hosting for $10 a month. And I think it cost me at that point, I was using some cheap budget host, and it cost me like $4 a month. So I had $6 a month in profitability. That was it. $10 a month in total revenue that was recurring. But every month I got $10 a month. I think they paid it annually. So I got $120 a year. And I got another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. Now we have almost $2 million in annual recurring revenue, but that started with $10 a month. So finding ways to develop recurring revenue and then varying those revenue streams can be so powerful in business, because it's not just hosting. It's hosting, and it's maintenance, and it's coaching, and it's consulting, and it's all these different pieces of the puzzle, each of which produce a different revenue stream for the business, which is really important as we go into economic recession type seasons, because the only way that you make it through that is diversity in revenue. People say all the time that you have to niche down in order to be successful. That is not true. You do not have to niche down to be successful. You can scale more quickly. That's true, but you don't have to niche down. Because why? Because I haven't, and it's worked perfectly fine. We've grown every single year, top and bottom line, for 20 years in a row. The second thing that I would say is extremely important in seeing sustained success without totally losing your mind in the process is you have to have the right people around you. So there's 4 people I always say that you have to have around you if you want to grow successfully without losing your mind. Number 1, you got to have somebody to look up to. So somebody that you're learning from, somebody that's ahead of you in business. You're reading their books, you're following their webinars, you're listening to their podcasts, whatever it is, somebody that's ahead of you that you're looking up to. You need somebody that's standing beside you. And what I mean by that person is people, other business owners, other people that are in a similar line of work to you, that are kind of, you can have a little bit of commiserating in the tough days, but also celebrate together in the good days. Then you need somebody that's looking up to you. So somebody that's learning from you. I think we should all be teaching all the time. And if we're all teaching, we're going to actually learn the most. So we need somebody to look up to, somebody to stand beside us, somebody who's looking up to us. And the last one is, this is my wife from earlier that I was talking about. You need somebody that believes in you when you don't believe in yourself. Because along the way, regardless of how good you are, how smart you are, or how whatever you are, there are going to become seasons where you go, I'm not sure I can do this. There are going to be seasons where you go, I'm not sure I have what it takes. I'm not sure I'm smart enough. I'm not sure I'm as good as this person, especially in the midst of the climate that we're in with today's social media world. Of all you got to do is flip on Instagram and there's all these mega successful, people. And the truth is often much, much different. We very rarely show our behind the scenes on Instagram, and that can make us feel like we don't have what it takes. So those 2 things, recurring revenue and having the right people in your life, can make all the difference around long-term business success and growth.
Yeah, I love that idea of having the right people around you. I think that's quintessential to being successful and becoming the success you want to be in life. I have this kind of thought that any big business or successful business or business you see, I want to be that someday. They're not all that much different than where you are right now. In fact, they were probably where you are today 5 years ago, 10 years ago, however long ago. And all they've really done is they've, persisted and overcome a lot of challenges to get to that point. That's all to me, building a business is. It's experimentation and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and overcoming challenges. And if you overcome enough challenges, you eventually continue on and get to the point where you want to be. But that's not to do that is a whole nother story. Talking the talk is different than walking the walk. And when it comes to actually doing those things, nobody can do it themselves. And if you are somehow an Elon Musk sort of just pushing everything, doing everything myself, you're probably an extreme exception to the rule. Most people need support and the right people around them. So I love that idea. And obviously I'm a big fan of monthly recurring revenue. And I love hearing about starting so small, because a lot of people are at that starting point where they're I've only got $100 monthly recurring revenue. I'm in the indie hackers community, and I get emails from them every once in a while, and people celebrating $100 monthly recurring revenue. And obviously to us, that's not a lot of monthly recurring revenue, but in some ways it's the most important amount of monthly recurring revenue, because you can't get to $2 million or $3 million annual recurring revenue without hitting those first steps, and figuring out how to get from 0 to 1 can sometimes be the toughest point.
Well, and the biggest thing about that too, I think, is as soon as when people start to give you their money, that's the greatest sign of hey, I actually do believe in your product or service. Because people give lip service to this all the time. And it's one of the biggest dangers that people have when they're starting a business or trying to run a business is, oh yeah, I would pay for that. Oh yeah, I think that's great. Okay, well, will you pay me for it? Oh, well, no, that's not really for me. And so, when people actually start paying you, I don't care if it's that first $10 or if it's the $100,000 or if it's the millionth dollar, you can always have these milestones that you're reaching for, but there's so much trust in somebody actually giving you that money. And then being a good steward of that money and caring well for it to make sure that you're delivering the value for them that hopefully is going to be more valuable than what you're paying and they're paying you. I mean, my uncle told me a long time ago, just do a good job for people and ask them to tell somebody else. You never run out of business.
Oh man, that's great advice. I like little mantras like that keep things simple for me, because if things get too complex, I'm I'll get lost. I can't follow anything. I'm I don't know what's going on. But if I can follow simple formulas, then I'll be good to go. I wanted to touch on a little bit more. You talked about potential, different ways to run kind of agency models. There's niching down into different areas, and then there's staying somewhat more general. It sounds like you have at Design Extensions. Yeah. And I love that you said there's so many examples of people being successful both ways. It's not like you have to do this to be successful or you have to do that to be successful. It's all about learning and executing in a way that makes sense for your business. I'd love to talk a little bit more about design extensions, kind of not niching down. You kind of mentioned that you have a lot of different or a few different areas for like monthly recurring revenue and just revenue driving revenue in general for the business. How did you decide what new monthly recurring revenue area you wanted to add to your business? Like you started off like doing hosting and design. When did you decide to start getting into like consultation and things like that? And I'm kind of asking on a personal note because WP Buffs does like website management. Like that's what we do. Like we're the technical partner for agencies and freelancers and also like business owners and entrepreneurs, startups, those kind of things. What if we wanted to like do a little bit more than that? Like what if we had customers who were asking us for other stuff and we wanted to go into other areas? Like, yeah, how did you decide like what's the best new areas we should go into now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think number one, it's just a matter of like, what are people asking for that you're already doing business with? So we're already doing business with these people and they need this service over here and I'm having to tell them to go use this company over here. And maybe that is the best thing for now, because sometimes if you jump too quickly into something that you really don't have enough knowledge base on, it can be, a real hot mess. And then you can damage a relationship that you could have kept perfectly fine by just doing what you were already good at. The problem is you never grow or stretch yourself that way. So I'm a pretty, I'm not like an aggressive risk taker, but I want to like explore new frontiers. That's my personality type. Like I want to kind of try a new thing. And so that's always making me look around and go, all right, what do our clients need that we can provide? But we also have to be really good at what we're already doing. And that comes down to systemization of process. Now, I used to be like a big anti-process, anti-systemization kind of guy, because I felt like it made everything cookie cutter. And I felt like it made everything like not unique in some way, because it wasn't like this organic creative process. And we were following these stringent rules, if you will. And I've learned over time that's just not really true. Creatives can still be creative within constraints. And sometimes those constraints actually create great value. And so now that we have better systems and process, I'm able to step away. Number one, I'm not involved in building websites anymore. I used to do the whole thing. I would design them in Photoshop and then I'd slice them up and then I'd export the images and write the HTML and put the tables together back before we had CSS. And, I did all of that, but I don't do any of that anymore. I mean, I barely even know how to use half the editors that we use now for client websites, but that's my job. My job is to not know how to do those things. That's hard for people as you scale and grow a business. And so having the right systems in place and knowing what we do now really well allows us to go, all right, that is working really well. That's working like clockwork. Now I can go do this thing over here. And to me, I don't have a ton of other businesses that I operate. I have a few that I kind of have a little bit of ownership in, but this is my primary baby. But inside of design extensions, there's all these little extensions, for lack of a better word, that we kind of operate that are almost like micro businesses within the businesses. Like our hosting, we do enough website hosting, that is a business by itself. We do enough maintenance, that's a business by itself. We do enough website building, business by itself, consulting, application development, all these different things. We didn't used to do all those things. So I think you have to get good at what you're doing first. You have to have good systems in place to kind of optimize and automate that stuff. And then you can look at, all right, what other services can we provide? And that's ultimately dictated by what people need and what they want.
Yeah. That's, I guess it's kind of what we're up to. We get a lot of feedback from customers about, hey, can you help me with this? Or can you help me with like X, Y, or Z? And we can be like, yeah, sure, we do X and Y, but we don't really do Z. Like here's one of our partners we can do that with. And so we're always thinking about like, what are some other areas we can start to dive into? And I always, I guess, thought that I wanted to be, the reason I didn't want to jump too quickly into doing other things is because I wanted to make sure that WP Buffs is really, really, really good at the one thing that we do. And then maybe we'll jump into something else when we've kind of hit that point of like, like what you're talking about, this is really highly systemized. We're like nailing this month over month. And now maybe we're more comfortable, like maybe doing a second thing or a third thing. But I mean, I love the idea of just listen to your customers. And if you've done a good job kind of building monthly recurring revenue in one area, and you have enough customers where you can get good feedback from them about maybe some other things they need. Hey, 20% of these folks need, more consultation when it comes to like marketing and growth. Hey, that we already know like there's money to be spent there because, like you said, there's the huge step of like them paying you money. They paid you money. They're probably willing to like pay money to do other stuff. So, hey, if we can step into that role, then we kind of, it's like it lowers your risk, I guess, because you kind of already know like there's one, a market there, and two, like you already have customers who you already have the credit card information. All you have to do is just like get them to like agree to more stuff to do when you're already doing good work for them in this other area. So it's like a pretty easy bridge to get there.
Yeah. And it also goes back to like really just asking the question, like, how can I help this customer? Like, how can I help them succeed? Like when we were joking about the whole Obi Wan Star Wars thing, but seriously, like that's the idea. Like that's it. It is, Obi Wan's responsibility in Star Wars was not to be the hero of the story. It was to come alongside Luke Skywalker and help him succeed. What does Luke need to be successful? Well, he needs a lightsaber. He needs some training. He needs this. He needs this. And so you look at your customer and go, how can I help them? And that's what sales is ultimately. People get uncomfortable about sales, especially I find people in the design realm or even in development realm. They just feel like there's something icky about sales in general. But there's not. Good sales is just helping other people accomplish their dreams and desires. That's it. And if what you offer is actually going to help them succeed, I believe you're morally obligated to convince them to buy it, not the other way around. And so there's so much confusion because plenty of us have had bad salespeople sell us bad products at some point in life. And so that's why we feel like that. So there's reason behind it. But good sales, if you know you got a product or service that's going to help somebody, man, we got to convince them to use it because it's going to be helpful for them. And if it's helpful for them, it's going to be helpful to others. And that's how you grow a business.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think you're going to feel icky doing sales if you're selling some crappy product, right? Or a crappy service that doesn't work. But if you're selling something that's truly going to help someone, it kind of like, I almost think of sales more as just like an educational tool. It's like someone hops on a discovery call with us. We're going to talk about the benefits of what we do. And like, we're pretty upfront and straightforward in our sales calls. Like, if like this subscription isn't the right fit for you, like we're not going to like push it on anybody. We're not here. Like, it's almost like we're not even here to like sell it. We're just here to like get the information out in front of you and help you make the right decision. And if that right decision is a subscription with us, that's great for us. But if not, that's actually like not good for anybody. So, but I totally agree. Like sales sometimes feels like this, like maybe if you're like, cold calling or email outreach, like, that can feel a little bit more like intrusive. And it's one of the reasons why we've done more of like the inbound marketing, because like we just kind of every week we look at our calendar and it's like, oh, we've got like 30 discovery calls this week because they just came in through organic search and they've like already said they've gone through that vetting process of like saying they want what we offer already. And that also seems like I don't know, nicer way to do sales for me as opposed to like picking up the phone and like giving random people calls. Maybe it's just not my style. I don't know. I'd love to talk about the footer of your website because it looks like you're an Inc. 5000 on the Inc. 5000 list for 2019, which is super cool. That's like one of my goals for WP Buffs is to like reach this point of hitting that list. Not that at the end of the day, it's somewhat arbitrary, right? And it's kind of like this, like, I don't know, like it feels somewhat like an arbitrary goal to hit, but there's something about like achieving that to me would like signify that like we've done something great with our business. And I just see you've already kind of made it in 2019. So first, congratulations. And second, like what was going through your head when like you got that whatever email or notification that says like you've made the Inc. 5000 list?
So full transparency, it actually makes me really nervous. And here's why. The Inc. 5000 list is based on the country's fastest growing companies. So the way that they do the math, for anybody that's not familiar, is I think you have to have over $2 million in revenue, and then you have to have grown a certain percentage over the previous year in comparison to every other company in the country. That's essentially how it works. And so you can't go from like $1 in sales to like $5,000 in sales and then be like, oh, 5,000% growth or whatever that is. It's not like that. You have to have over a certain amount and there's a trigger point. But I have actually always been a big believer in slow, consistent growth. So when I start hearing like, hey, you're one of the fastest growing companies in the country, I go, whoa, hold on. that makes me a little nervous because I want to make sure that speed is not costing quality, speed,
Right.
because here's what I believe. When you're driving really fast in a car and you get in an accident, the likelihood of severe damage is very high. But if you're driving very slow and you get in an accident, the likelihood of severe damage is very low. The same is true in business. If you're moving exceptionally fast, there's high risk. But if you slow down a little bit, there's less risk. The problem is in our society, we don't have the patience for slow growth. So I was excited about it. I was honored to get it. And it's definitely gotten us a lot of attention. You know, it's one of those things that's like everybody knows what the Inc. 5000, Inc. 500 would be even better, but we didn't make it that high on the list. Is everybody knows what that list is, that you've heard of it before. And so there's notoriety in it. So that there is something like as a businessman, you go, I've accomplished something. But I also think that there can be false positives that we have to be careful of in business and in growth. I'll give you another example. We were distributed. We didn't have a central office for 16 years. Never had a physical office space, all worked remote. It was fine. Finally decided to put an office in, primarily because a bunch of us had a bunch of kids and working from home became very difficult in order to do that. I've got 5 kids at home. And another guy had 4, another guy had 5. So we were like making a lot of babies around here. And so we needed a place to go work. So now we have a great physical office that we love. But when I built that office, all of a sudden I had all these people be like, oh, congratulations. Like they were all basically praising me as a business owner, as if I had just started a business, which was good because it created attention, which was valuable. But it was actually the first time in the company that I had ever been in debt. I had been totally debt free as a company for 16 years. And then I bought an office and bought all this equipment and stuff. And I started taking on I took on long-term debt of a mortgage. I took on some short-term debt of a bunch of equipment that we needed to buy. So to me, I was actually less successful in the moment than I had ever been, but all these people were giving me all these accolades. So I think we have to be careful of stuff like that, of not letting these trophies be too dangerous. So the Inc. 5000 is great. I'm proud that we kind of hit that level, but it also makes me cautious. That's how I think as a business leader.
Yeah, that's like, it's really refreshing for me to hear as someone who's like not hit that list yet. And like, maybe you're the person I'm talking to now, who's the person who's ahead of me, who I need to talk to about this stuff, because it's nice to hear, because like as a business owner, I feel like I'm always kind of growing and putting myself outside of my comfort zone. And there's always something going on that I'm like kind of stretching myself in and learning in that area. And like, this is a good example of that, especially in terms of like kind of being able to see around corners and know like when something happens, like there are always positives and there are always negatives and there are always like a few things probably in between those two things. And to take things as they come in the right way is really important, especially when it comes to mentality. And I remember like I tweeted out once that like we'd earned our like $1,000,000th on Stripe, which was really cool. I was like, again, like somewhat arbitrary number, but like still like cool. Like that's a cool number to hit. And I remember getting like a ton of positive feedback. Oh my God, that's so amazing. So amazing. But also thinking like, I don't feel like I've done anything that special, like, or that I'm that different than I was when I made my like, $100,000. Like it's not, I just kept going. But having that mentality of like staying grounded, I guess, and like staying humble and making sure that, while this is a great accolade, hey, there's more to do. And also, like, I'm interested to hear that, because you mentioned that, like, around that time, you weren't technically as, like, financially successful because you had, like, gone into debt on a few things. There are a lot of companies out there with, 2 employees that are maybe, like, more profitable than a company with 20 employees. I get this all the time, like, how many people do you have on your team? And people like kind of say like, that's to some people like a measure of success. Probably to a lot of people, That's a measure of success. They're like, oh, you've got like 20 people. Like that's twice as amazing as 10 people. Like, wow, congratulations. And as you grow as a business owner, you realize like, man, I'm trying to do the opposite. Like I want to hire less people to do more and like pay them more and be more efficient. But like people outside of this realm don't really realize that. So is that something that you had to like kind of grapple with as well?
And it's such a pride and an ego thing as a business owner. One of the most valuable things, but money and people are kind of the biggest thing, right? Like I hit a certain revenue mark, which revenue is crap anyway. It's, it's really profitability that matters. Let's be honest. And number of people, I mean, that's one of the reasons I started hiring people is I wanted to create jobs for people. So I love creating jobs for people. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yep.
But I will say that there is a big level of pride there that's not necessarily healthy. I remember back in the day, there's a conference that I go to every year. Well, back when we used to get to go to conferences, and everybody there owns an agency of some size. So some people are there as like they got 2 people on their team, and other people are there and they have 200. And I remember like before we had even 10 people, that there was kind of like this next layer where like you kind of got into this club almost once you pass 10, another club once you pass a certain level, and now that, we're at around 20, we're at 17 right now. It's a really good size for us. And so growth for growth's sake is really, really dangerous. And it can put you in a very bad situation. So you should only hire when you really need to hire. And when you hire, you should hire very slowly. And then when you have to fire, you should fire even slower because you're the one that hired them in the first place. Now, there are people with different opinions about that, but that's mine. It's worked for me for a long time. And I think there is a lot of pride, and that's not inherently bad. Like, it's not bad to want to have more people. It's not bad to want to have more money, but it can be dangerous if that's our only focus. Because for me now, I felt like I had to get the team to a certain size so it could operate without me, because that was a big difference. That's a big differentiator between sub 10 people and over 10 is most companies have to be at a certain size so that you can step away. For example, I'm about to take a month-long RV trip next month with our whole family. I'll still be around and available, but I'm certainly not working 5 days a week, 6 days a week, full time. That's not going to happen. There has to be a team in place that can operate without me. And plus, if I've got a team and I get hit by a bus, God forbid, and don't make it, what happens to the company? What happens to our clients? What happens to the rest of the team? If the whole thing is dependent on me and I'm the linchpin of the entire organization, then the amount of suffering that happens as a result of that is much higher than just my own death. And I don't want that. That gets a little morbid, but these are the things we have to think about when you're in charge of people. That's a responsibility as a leader as you grow, especially those people out there that are just, solopreneurs running, single person WordPress shops. Man, you could be so successful doing that, and it's a lot of fun. The hard thing is, unless you develop good recurring revenue, which is what we were talking about earlier, when you stop working, the money stops coming too. And so that's all that has to be factored in. But going back to what you were saying a minute ago, I do think there is a real danger in being in the praise that we get for awards, for number of people and number of dollars that aren't always actually the most important thing. So those are things to think about for sure.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with that. It's just funny. The whole time we've been talking here, I've been like, man, like Jay reminds me of somebody. Like I can't pin it on I can't nail it, but he reminds me of someone. And then it was like, oh, Dave Ramsey. Like he sounds a lot like Dave Ramsey. Like I'm feeling like a lot of like resonation, like the way you talk and the way you put things. Like, oh, and I'm on your website right now. You have this book that's out. It's at getjaysbook.com. And I see like a picture of you and Dave Ramsey and like John Maxwell here. I'm like, oh yeah, like okay, now this is making sense. Something now is completed.
Yes.
So seems like is this the conference you were talking about? And like I listened to the podcast.
That's one of them.
Leadership.
That's not actually the conference I was talking about previously, but I absolutely love the Entre Leadership Tribe. And when I was talking about people that I look up to and people that I learn from, I mean, Dave is certainly one of those people. That particular book, Entre Leadership, has been one of the most foundational documents for me because it's just real practical. A lot of business books get a lot of theory in versus like, here's how you run this business. And that's kind of how I tried to put my book together too. The idea behind building a business that lasts is most businesses don't make it past the first year. And even fewer make it past the 5th year. Once you get past the 5th year, there's a lot more stability. And once you get past the 10th year, you're basically as stable as you want to be unless you make some real catastrophic choices. And so for me, I wanted to give people practical strategy around how to build a business that lasts. And Dave and that entire organization, Entre Leadership, certainly has done that for me. It's been a huge catalyst for my own personal growth and our growth as an agency.
Yeah. I'm a big listener to the podcast. I kind of go hot and cold on podcasts. So sometimes I'm listening to it more, sometimes not. You know how it is. Yeah. Sometimes things are in, sometimes not as much. But that's one of the core, when people have questions about like what podcast should I listen to as a business owner. I mean, there are a lot out there, but like Entre Leadership's one of those like super solid, like you could listen to any episode and gain like 5 or 10 gems from that episode. And if you have a specific challenge you're having right now, like that's a library definitely to like go look through. And maybe, I don't know if they have like search on their website. I'm sure they have something where you can like have a certain challenge you're looking for and find, 10 episodes that go through something like that. So cool. And the book is called Building a Business That Lasts. You mentioned earlier you've got 5 kids at home. So yeah, working 60-hour work weeks probably is not as much of an option anymore. So I guess, I'd love to hear a little bit more like about what's in the book and how to, I'm sure it matches something, has something around like how to, as you're growing a family, how to run a business and that has to do with building a business that lasts. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about the book and what's in it.
Yeah, so the subtitle of the book is actually Without Sacrificing Family. So building a business that lasts without sacrificing family. I do have 5 kids, and they range from 7 to 15 right now. And one of the questions I always ask at the end of my podcast is around work-life balance. Like, what does that even mean to you? It means something different to everybody. In my book, I actually have a chapter I call the work-life blender, because I don't think it's about balance. I think that in certain seasons of life, it is all out Gary V style hustle. 24/7, 365, you got to put the pedal to the metal to get the job done. In other seasons of life, you just need rest. In other seasons of life, there are other people that need your time, and that's different for everyone. And so, when I was in my early 20s and I wasn't married yet, or even right when I first got married, didn't have any kids yet, I could put a lot more screen time in than I can now. Because ultimately I have a vision for my life that is bigger than just a successful, scalable business. I want to be married to the same woman when I'm 75 years old. I want our children to bring their children to our house. I want to have a place where we can all be together and I also want to build a business that's successful and scalable and helps tons of other people, both the people that work for the company and the people that are clients of the company. And I believe all of that can happen together. And I think in our society right now, we have this like pendulum of like, you either have to be this or you have to be that. You have to sacrifice this to have that. And I just don't believe that's true. I don't only not believe it's true. I know it's not true because, I'm not saying I'm the end all be all of success. Lord knows I have plenty of really, really hard days in my marriage and in my parenting and in my business. But it is about looking at the whole of everything and going, hey, what do we need right now? What's the most important? And a lot of it comes down to communication. I mean, my wife knows that there's some days and some weeks where ahead of time I go, hey, babe, I got a lot going on. I'm not going to be very available this week. It's like, all right, as long as I know that ahead of time, I know what the plan is. And I think everybody has to have that, communication cadence. That's the big piece of the puzzle. And one of the stories I tell in the book, I'll kind of round out this section with this is, so often we treat those that we would say are the most important in our lives differently than we do our own clients. And I give this example. I say, if you were sitting at dinner with somebody who you've been trying to get as a prospect or as a client for years, it's a perfect connection. It's exactly who you want to be connected with. And you're having a great dinner with them. And some random person calls you. Maybe it's even just a lower level client that's not as important as this person. Would you pick that phone up and walk out of that dinner to go talk to that person? And the answer is no. Of course you wouldn't. But how many times do we do that with our spouses? How many times do we do that with our kids? So be where you are, and look, my wife will tell you, I struggle with this. Like I'm not preaching, I'm preaching to myself as much as I am to anybody else, but be where you are in those seasons, because especially for those of you that have kids or thinking about having kids, I know people say this all the time, but man, they grow up so fast. My 15-year-old, it seems like yesterday that he was a fat little chunky baby, rolling around on the couch, and he's about to start driving. And I can see him leaving now for the first time ever. And it's like, holy smoke. So like, I can work whenever. I can work till I'm dead, thankfully with digital work, we're not exactly, attributed by how exhausted our bodies are. Hopefully my brain lasts long enough to make it, but I can work forever. My kids are growing up. And so work-life balance is not about balance for me. It's about looking at the season and going, hey, some seasons you need a little bit more sugar in your blender, and some seasons you need a little bit more spinach, and you got to figure out what that is for you, and not based on what anybody else tells you. Just because Gary Vee wants to work 24/7, that's him. Just because somebody else tells you got to take 3 nap breaks or you're not being successful, that's up to them. You got to figure out what works for you in your season of life, and that's okay.
Yep. I love the idea of like having work-life balance. And what's the point of building a big, awesome, amazing business if you're going to be working 100 hours a week trying to get it figured out? That being said, I mean, everything you're saying, I love it because it's like shades of gray. It's like, it's never all one thing or all the other. Of course, there are times where you're going to put in a lot of time to building a business. It's like, in my opinion, especially when you're starting something out, I mean, just to get from 0 to 1, like it requires a lot of work. And the one way you can differentiate yourself is like just putting in a ton of time. Maybe, for me, it was like, well, I was with, my wife, but I didn't have like kids at home, and there were some things that I didn't have as much pressure financially. And so that was a good time to say like, hey, like in 5 years, I kind of want to have this business that like somewhat runs itself, and like I can work on the stuff I want to work on, but I also get to work from home and I can spend more time with our kids. So like, is it okay if I like work really hard for like the next year and then like build into that future? Like that's a great reason to want to spend a ton of time on something right now. And so I think that's a great place to end or to wrap up the podcast. Jay, thanks again for being on, man. This has been awesome. A couple quick things before we sign off. Tell people where they can find you, like online, social media, websites, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, my own personal website, which has links to my book and my podcast and all the other stuff, is jayowenlive.com. So that's JAYOWEN live.com. You can find all the links to everything else on there. If you want to get a copy of Building a Business That Lasts, you can find it at Amazon, or you can just go to getjaysbook.com, just cover shipping and handling, and we'll send you out a copy.
Cool. While we were chatting here, I grabbed a copy for myself, so I'm looking forward to reading it. Last but not least, I always ask our guests to ask our listeners here for a little 5-star iTunes review. So if you wouldn't mind giving a little ask, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go out and give 5 stars on iTunes. It makes a big difference for those of us doing podcasts. So help Joe and his team out by going out there and giving them 5 stars.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. And when you're leaving a review, make sure you leave something you learned from this episode in the comments, or something like, Jay is awesome, you should have him on again. And so we'll send him a screenshot and thank him for the review. You can go to WPMRR.com/iTunes. It redirects you right there to leave your quick review. If you're a new listener, tough times during these COVID outbreak and all that, it's pretty easy to sit around and binge Netflix or Hulu or HBO or whatever you're watching these days. Why don't you binge some of the WPMRR WordPress podcasts? You can go through some old episodes. Jay, I think you're actually going to be episode 99, so you just missed 100.
Oh, cool.
But 99 is still probably a pretty cool one to
be. It is. I'll take it.
So I also
started my business in 1999, so that kind of works out.
Oh, there you go. We're coming full circle here, so there you go. So if folks want to go through and listen to some old episodes, feel free. If you have questions for us at the show, Christy and I are going to do another Q&A episode coming up. So email questions to yo@wpmrr.com. That is it for this week. We will be again in your podcast players again next Tuesday. Jay, thanks again for being on, man. It's been real.